Hi, I'm Andy, and this is my lesson on iterating over 2D arrays in Java. In this lesson, I'll show you how to iterate over a 2D array to find the average of its rows and its columns. Let's get started. In the previous lesson, we worked with this 2D integer array called gradebook. We created a method to print a 2D array and a method to find its min and max values. In this lesson, we'll add a few more methods to the program. First, we'll add a method called calcTestAverages that finds the average score on each test. Since this method will be called on the main class, it needs to be static. This method will return a 1D double array containing the test averages, and it will be passed one parameter, the 2D array containing all the scores for all the tests. To find the test averages, we need to traverse through the array, row by row. For each row, we'll sum up the scores and divide that sum by the number of scores to get the average. Let's start by making the 1D array to hold the test averages. As you can see, the number of test averages is equal to the number of rows in the 2D array. Therefore, the length of this 1D array needs to equal the length of the 2D array. Next, we'll make a variable to hold the array index we're about to fill in. The first index we'll fill in will be index 0. Now we need to traverse our 2D array, row by row, summing up the numbers in each row. The outer for loop will grab each row one at a time. We'll use a for each loop for that. We need to calculate the sum of each row. So before going through each number in the row, we need to create a sum variable and initialize it to 0. We'll use another for each loop to grab each integer in the current row, one at a time, and add it to sum, like this. After summing up the row's integers, we need to find the average by dividing that sum by the number of integers in that row. That is simply the length of the row. Don't forget, we need to use a cast to convert one of our integers to a double to ensure that the division gives us a decimal result. We can then put that double into our test averages array at slot I. Then we need to increment I so the next average goes into the next slot. After the nested for loops have ended, our 1D array should be filled in with all the test averages. Now we simply have to return that array. To test this method out, let's quickly add a method that prints a 1D array of doubles. Now we'll call calcTestAverages and pass its return double array to the print1D array method. Good, so that worked. The second method we need to add is one that iterates over the 2D array and finds each student's test average. Again, that method will return a 1D array of doubles and will be passed a 2D array of ints. To find the student's test averages, we need to find the average of each column in the array. To do that, we'll first make a 1D array of doubles to hold those student averages. As you can see here, the size of that 1D array is equal to the number of columns in the 2D array. To find the number of columns, we simply find the length of any row. We'll use row 0 for that task. As you'll see when we go through our nested for loop, we don't need a separate index variable for our 1D array. Now we need to traverse our 2D array, column by column, summing up the numbers in each column. The outer for loop will move from one column to the next. We cannot use a for each loop for that task. A for each loop grabs the array's elements one at a time. For a 2D array, those array elements are the rows of the table, not its columns. So we'll need to use a regular for loop instead. We'll use C as the column index and initialize it to 0. C will range from 0 to the length of an array row. Now we need to make our sum variable and initialize it to 0. The inner for loop will sum all the numbers in column C. So we'll declare a variable called R to stand for the row index. R will vary from 0 to the number of rows in the table. Now we simply need to add the element at index RC to the sum. After summing the numbers in the column, we need to find its average, like this. Now we need to add this average to our 1D array. As you can see here, the index at which it needs to be added is equal to C, the column index. Once the nested for loops have finished, we can return the array of averages. Let's test out this new method exactly like we did before. Good, so it looks like both methods work correctly. And that wraps up this lesson on iterating over 2D arrays in Java. I'm Andy. Thanks for watching and coding with me today.